Hello, Mr. and Mrs. America, all the men and women in the military, and all the ships at sea. This is all the news that's fit to present. More than 70 years after Catherine Lawrence and other nurses introduced anesthesia to the Civil War battlefield, Agatha Hodgins formed the National Association of Nurse Anesthetists. The year is 1931. Dateline, Milwaukee, 1935. The historical first annual meeting of the AANA is held with 120 nurse anesthetists in attendance. In 1937, the AANA moves from Cleveland, Ohio to Chicago, Illinois. International Dateline, 1939. The AANA changes its name to the American Association of Nurse Anesthetists at a time when war with Germany and Japan is just around the corner. From 1941 to 1945, AANA members contribute to the war effort and expand the education of nurse anesthetists at home. 1944, membership in the AANA is extended to African American nurse anesthetists. The first Schools of Anesthesiology Assembly is held in 1946, and in 1947 the AANA extends membership to male nurses. 1955, the AANA is appointed by the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare as the accrediting agency for schools of nurse anesthesia. The Code of Ethics is adopted by the AANA in the same year. And in 1956, the Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist credential is created. Membership in the AANA is growing, and for the first time passes 10,000 in 1956. Dateline 1963. A nurse anesthetist, Colonel Mildred Irene Clark, is named as the first CRNA to serve as Chief of the Army Nurse Corps. In 1965, nurse anesthetists are serving in Vietnam. The AANA and the ASA release a joint statement indicating the desirability of the two organizations to work together to improve overall patient care. In 1970, Mount Marty College in Yankton, South Dakota, offers the first bachelor's degree program in nurse anesthesia. And in 1972, John Garde becomes the first male president of the AANA. 1974 sees the adoption of a new logo and the publication of Standards for Nurse Anesthesia Practice. In 1975, the ASA challenges the AANA's right to accredit nurse anesthesia programs, and AANA representatives testify in front of a congressional committee about national health care coverage. In 1979, AANA members approve the mandatory continuing education of CRNAs. The 1980s are a busy time for the AANA. In 1981, the association turns 50 years old and creates the AANA Education and Research Foundation. Dateline, Washington, D.C. For the first time, federal funding is appropriated for nurse anesthetist traineeships in 1983. A year later, the AANA pass-through provision of the 1984 Deficit Reduction Act becomes law. News from the courtroom. 1985, Bond versus NME Hospitals Incorporated grants CRNAs standing in a federal antitrust lawsuit where it is shown that CRNAs can compete with anesthesiologists. Also in 1985, the AANA donates to a worthy cause, the Vietnam Women's Memorial Project. Dateline, Washington, D.C. CRNAs become eligible for reimbursement under Medicare Part B in 1986, making nurse anesthetists the first nursing specialty accorded such rights. AANA insurance is established in 1988. On the practice front, AANA publishes the AANA Professional Practice Manual for Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetists and adds a patient monitoring standard to the Standards for Nurse Anesthesia Practice. In 1990, AANA members serve in Operation Desert Shield and in Operation Desert Storm. Dateline 1991. In order to prepare students for the certification examination, the Council on Certification publishes the Self-Evaluation Examinations. AANA is on the move once again. In December 1992, the AANA purchases its current headquarters building at 222 South Prospect Avenue in Park Ridge, Illinois. In 1996, the AANA website goes live, and the Rest Assured ad campaign kicks into high gear. Standards of office-based practice are adopted in 1999. Dateline 2000. The National Nurse Anesthetist Week begins in January. Iowa becomes the first state to opt out of the federal physician supervision requirement in 2001. In 2004, the Minnesota Association of Nurse Anesthetists successfully resolves a 10-year-old lawsuit that brought about regulatory changes regarding CRNAs. The AANA Foundation celebrates its 25th anniversary in 2006. And former President Bill Clinton speaks at the 75th anniversary convention. The AANA builds a temporary museum celebrating its history. AANA joins the Coalition for Patients' Rights to ensure patients have a full range of healthcare provider options and the right to choose among them. 2007. The Council on Recertification of Nurse Anesthetists and the Council of Certification of Nurse Anesthetists form the National Board for Certification and Recertification of Nurse Anesthetists. 2008. AANA is the only group of anesthesia professionals to join the Safe Injection Practices Coalition. 2009. Going electronic. AANA launches Anesthesia Essential, its first electronic news publication. Also in 2009, the AANA introduced AANA Learn, an online continuing education system to help CRNAs meet their continuing education needs. The AANA Foundation supports the landmark Lewin and RTI studies on the cost-effectiveness and safety of nurse anesthetists in 2010. The studies receive extensive media coverage and shake up the anesthesia world. In 2010, Colorado becomes the 16th state to opt out of the federal physician supervision requirement for nurse anesthetists, following California in 2009. And this is all the AANA news for now. Good night, Mr. and Mrs. America, all the men and women in the military, and all the ships at sea. Happy 80th anniversary, AANA. And now you know the whole story.